going.
So I apologize to everyone. It's my error, not Holly's.
It's 2 plus 2 plus 17.
What is going on in here? We're back, Grizzlies. Get ready.
Isn't it wonderful?
Yes! But how is this possible? Well, let me show you.
Yeah. I feel like I could rule the world. I know I could be what I want to.
Good morning. How are you doing? All right, get your phones out. Got the tickets. All right, well, let's go right down the road, right down there, right around the maze.
Stop, keep going, cause you know they love to see you fall. I don't know about you, but I'm trying to ball. Cause I ain't had enough and I deserve it all.
Go ahead and show me. Okay, it looks like Zach passed today.
Never looking back like
Feeling like gold, I don't wanna hide it. Oh yeah, on top of the world, nothing gonna stop me. Ain't nobody telling me no, I'll get you.
One more.
Yeah, like I can rule the world. Yeah, like I'm on top of the world.
Yes, Audrey, may I sharpen my pencil? Yes, it's right over in the corner.
all I wanna do is live my best.
Hey Grizzlies, Mr. Schumacher here. Just wanted to run through the schedule real quick. For AM cohort, when you arrive, you're going to go through the arrival attestation, go right to your homeroom, just like you would on a normal day, Tuesday through Friday. And then you will go through periods 1, 2, and 3 on Tuesday and Thursday, and then periods 4, 5, and 6 on Wednesday and Friday, just as you would now. If I'm in the PM, it's the same thing. My start times are just a little bit later. If you have any questions, please let us know. We look forward to seeing you.
Charlie, I'm really seeing your answer. I'm loving it. Okay, the bell is about to ring, so we need to clean up our stations before we go to our next class, so it's nice and sanitized. Audrey, can I have you pick up all of the calculators? Summer, will you please pick up all of the pens? Miles, will you please pick up all of the whiteboards? And I'm going to give everybody a white to write down their station and write down their Okay, I'm going to release this side first. Just go ahead and throw your stripes away to your neck.
Hey guys, let's line up. Make sure you line up on the line there. Let's go these two lines. These two lines here. As soon as you see your parent, you go ahead and get in the car.
I was fascinated with the approach that White River took, and I think it's really helpful for us to envision what are some of the necessary steps that will be implemented in our schools. For those individuals that are not familiar with the interior of our schools, we've got a lot of places that students can congregate, and the flow of students as pedestrians through the hallways needs to be very, very structured. So this whole process needs to be tight. It can't be loose. If it's loose, we're not going to be successful. If we're tight, it's likely we will be successful. So I'm counting on staff, I'm counting on students, I'm counting on parents to make this reopening a very successful reopening. Later today or tonight, you're going to be hearing from Holly again, but next up, we have our General Willis, our safety protocol czar, Christopher Willis, who is someone who has got a real passion for the work that he's been leading in our district, and we've turned to him on several occasions. And so, Chris, I want you to know how much I appreciate all that you've done and what you continue to do on behalf of the students and staff.
Well, thanks. I don't have a video, so you're going to have to deal with me for the next 10 minutes. So what I'd like to do is I asked Bonnie to do the presenting for me, and by that meaning she's going to be putting up the document for your review. And so, Bonnie, do you want to put that up for me? So there are 3 sections of this document. The first section is basically the guiding safety principles that Dr. Apostle has already alluded to. The second one, the second piece, and we'll get to it, is the guiding civil rights principles that we'll be following. And then the third one is the student access to learning. So I'd like to start out with a little bit about the safety principles for you, just to focus on. One of the things that you'll notice is that there are competing metrics that we have to deal with. The number one was the December 16th return to in-person learning guidance that we received from Governor Inslee. The second one, which we haven't, which really doesn't focus too much on the return to school, but does focus on the return to sports, is the Healthy Washington Roadmap to Recovery guidelines that Governor Inslee just this week, actually it wasn't this week, it was last week, provided to us last week. So one of the things that we have to really focus on is really the COVID-19 activity. Right now, we're considered in a high COVID-19 activity frame, which means that we're going to focus on, like Dr. Apostle had talked about, we're really going to focus on the return to learning for our elementary students, which really is for the littles, the pre-K through 5th grade students. Oh. And so, so moving down, can you move it up a little bit for me? So basically what we need to do is to really, what Dr. Apostle was talking about, was really stick tight to our safety protocols. And the first one is, and the only way that we're going to be able to do this well, is sufficient staffing to provide the educational services. So if we don't have the sufficient staff to maintain our small groupings, if we don't have sufficient staffing to be able to do our attestations or our screenings during the morning, if we don't have sufficient staff to be able to transport our kids or to provide the lunches, we're not going to be able to do that safely. We want to make sure also that we were making sure our cleaning and disinfectant between sessions and groups occurs. We want to make sure that we're promoting and ensuring physical distancing. That staff on the 29th, and I'll show you a little later, on the 29th of January, we'll be doing reacquainting many of our staff who haven't been in our buildings with our safety protocols, because we've learned a lot since the beginning of the school year. The daily screening attestations by staff and students. For those of you who don't, just like White River and other school districts, will be utilizing the health screening protocols within Skyward. We'll also be compliant with our immunizations. One of the things that we were given was a waiver on immunizations for our students. If we're going to bring them back, they have to be compliant with their immunizations, health history, and healthcare plans. Those things will need to be done 2 weeks prior to students returning to school. We'll also be doing lunches a little bit differently, whether it's grab or go or social distancing in our common areas. And then finally, high levels of participation, and I'm going to explain this a little, in the COVID-19 testing process. We were allocated over 5,000 COVID tests for our students over the age of 16 and our staff. All of this is something that staff don't have to do, but the more staff that participate in the COVID-19 testing process, the more successful we'll be in regards to maintaining our safety standards and keeping COVID out of our schools. For those of you who were wondering what has been the impact in COVID since the September, we've had 63 students or staff either sent home or kept home with symptoms or suspected cases since September. And by that meaning they were kept home, number one, needing to isolate at home, or number two, isolated at home and or asked to be COVID tested. We've had 11 close contacts since the beginning of the school year. Those close contacts had to quarantine, no matter if they were tested or not, had to quarantine at home for 14 days. And then we've had 3 confirmed cases since the beginning of the year. Two staff and 1 student were confirmed within our school system. So in regards to the safety pieces, the school needs to be vigilant, not only with our safety protocols and sanitation, but also we want to make sure that we get a high participation rate among our older students and staff regarding the COVID testing. In regards to what the parents are responsible for, they need to make sure that they're signed up for family access. They have to do the attestations. They have to be able to make sure that their student is healthy and if they have been exposed to COVID-19. And please, share it with our communities. Parents need to keep their kids home. If they're sick, if they're exhibiting any any symptoms associated or consistent with COVID, they need to stay home. Parents must also submit all non-required vaccinations. They must provide medical plans. Parents, we need to make sure that you're sending your children with at least 2 masks, water bottles, and tissue for use during the day. And parents of pre-1 and so pre as in preschool, kindergarten, and first grade, we're going to be asking parents to accompany your students to the bus stops, just like we do for kinders. We're going to ask for first grade parents as well, and to be able to meet their children at the bus stops when they dropped off. We want to make sure that parents are there to help with the social distancing and the mask use. And basically, our kids haven't been in school for 10 months. So we want to make sure that families are there to accompany their kids, because this is going to be, honestly, for some of our kinders, they won't even remember that they were in school before. And so we want to make sure that they're well aware of the processes and procedures that go on. In regarding the civil rights principles, we want to make sure that we're addressing and providing access to all of our students, whether they have disabilities, whether they speak a second language, whether they're in our foster care system, whether or not they identify with a different gender or a gender that's different than what they were born with. We want to make sure that we are addressing all access issues related to all of our students within our school district. Bonnie, you can move down to C. Okay. So in regards to the phases, as you well know, that since September, we've had our students with special needs in our special education programs and our transitional bilingual programs in school since September 8th. For me, that's basically 260 kids have been coming to school since September 8th. Then, starting in the second week of December, we've been providing equal access to students who are not equitably served due to technology access, economic status, homeless status, disability, foster care, and gender. Those students will be added throughout the school year in-person cohorts for the remainder of the school year. And now moving on to phase 3, what Tony had talked about, starting February 8th through March 8th, we'll be bringing back our pre-K through our fifth grade students. So please know that the timelines are subject to current patterns. Like Tony said, there are going to be 2 weeks scheduled between each wave. Move up the, Bonnie, if you can move it. There we go. Thanks. We want to make sure that the vaccinations are set. We want to make sure that our bus routes are planned, and we want to make sure that we have clear communication to the community regarding the phase-in return and safety protocols, documentation requirements, and timelines. So in January, starting on January 29th, we have our training. We also want to make sure in January, parents are really clear, and this is going to go out, that we have in January that our P1 student lists are due to the transportation department, and that all of our medical plans are ready to go in January. And then after that, in the beginning of February, bringing teachers back to prepare for in-person learning. During that first week in February will be transportation practice runs with additional staff to support compliance with safety protocols. P1 students, parents and students will attend a virtual, and this will be for all of them. So you'll see a pattern here, is that parents and students will attend a virtual orientation at least 1 week prior to school. All right. The second thing is that they will be completing Skyward daily health screenings a week prior to them entering school so that they're in practice. They'll be receiving daily reminders to complete the attestation, and that they practice completing those attestations as they go through the week so that we're ready to go when the students arrive. And then our counseling teams and administrations will meet for student reentry and possible response scenarios for all of our students who will be coming. So throughout this document, what you'll see is that there's 1 week of preparation, and then another week we bring them in. And so there'll be at least 1 week's of preparation for every student group coming in, P through 1, 2 and 3, and 4 and 5. There'll all be 1 week's preparation and orientation regarding all of our protocols and expectations coming in, as well as teacher preparation for their return to school. Bonnie, you want to go right down to the bottom of the document regarding the secondary? And this is the least, so phase 4. Go back up a little, please. Phase 4 is basically our secondary, and one of the recommendations made is that over time, when our case counts get around 200 or going towards 200, that will begin planning around AB schedules, which is still in the planning process, but a hybrid AB schedule is planned. But moving towards that 200 cases per 100,000 over 14 days is really, really going to be key for us in regards to moving the secondary into school. And what was also talked about, Tony had talked about, or Dr. Apostle had talked about, really focusing on our seniors, making sure that we bring in our seniors, hopefully for the last quarter. That's what I'm shooting for the last quarter of the school year. So if there's any questions, basically we'll be following the same frame for every grade group coming in, starting with the beginning of February. If there's any questions, I'd love to hear it. We also have the principals here because they know a heck of a lot more of the details than I do. But I'd love to hear that. If there's any, if people have any interest in listening to the athletic piece, I know we could share that as well. And we have that. We did put that out yesterday, and so be able to share that as well. So, any questions?
Of course, I have a couple. One, So the kids that are already attending now, I'm assuming this will affect their schedule in some way?
It could affect their schedule. It will impact some schedules, but not all.
Okay.
And so the answer is it has to.
Yeah.
But the amount of time they're in school will obviously increase.
Okay. That was actually, I should have worded it better. That's what I was getting at. And I had a question after the White River video, and that is the shared items that are collected. How do they sanitize them before another class? Like those shared calculators, but I think of, other grade levels have issues like that. How do we have to buy more supplies, or do we sanitize?
Well, currently what we do between sessions is that the teachers are responsible for sanitizing. We have alcohol wipes that we use, sanitizing wipes. We also have sanitizing spray that we use. And also Curtis has been going into the classrooms and sanitizing between sessions, in bathrooms, in classrooms, in all areas in the building that students are using. I'll give you an example. We had a situation where we had a COVID positive individual, and we had to make sure that that individual classroom wasn't being utilized until it was being sanitized. And so that was sanitized the day of we learned that there was actually an infection.
I do want to say thank you, Chris. You've done an excellent job with your protocols. Thanks for working all that new system out for us. And I know from Targan that it has been an effective set of protocols. So thank you very much for doing that. And I just want to make this push for everybody, because I've been hearing from teachers about being concerned that we're going back before they could get vaccinated. That's not, the district's choice. So you might want to think, if that's your belief, I think you should advocate with the governor and the superintendent of public education to get teachers and school staff, all school staff vaccinated. Just my little public service.
I'm with you, Kathy.
Yeah, me too.
Chris, do we know if there's going to be vaccinations soon for staff?
The only staff right now, we're in 1A.
Mm-hmm.
In 1A, we have our health services staff actually met the criteria, and I have completed 2 vouchers for Franciscan for two of our health services staff, two out of the 2 health services staff to be able to be vaccinated this week.
Okay.
And so those are the only ones right now, based on 1A, phase 1A, that are eligible for receiving the vaccination.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, we had a question in the chat that I wanted to answer. Jamie, you asked about middle school and high school dates. Unlike the elementary school, we've been free to start dates based on the governor's guidance that we can start as soon as we felt comfortable. The difference with high school is not allowed to start in phase 1. So we have to be at a certain metric or near a certain metric. So we can't set the date because it's based on a metric that 200 per 100,000. So we at least have to be going down and near or at that metric. So that's why we can't set a date, because we don't know when that metric's going to occur.
Thank you, Cliff. That's a great point.
Well, that may be true, but the 350,000 per 100,000 metric is a lot higher than we were in September, and we weren't allowed to start anybody. So it's this moving finish line that is very, it's not confusing, I understand it, but it's very frustrating. And if we're going 2 weeks between grade levels, and we could give 2 weeks after 5th grade starts, then March 22nd, middle school can start, and April 15th, high school can start. That's 2 weeks. I watched the governor's speech, I watched Chris Reichdel's speech, and they encouraged districts to make their own decisions with no repercussions about when students start. So we can start students. We could start them all tomorrow if we wanted to. It's the district's decision, and that's what's frustrating. The district needs to decide to give these high schoolers who are getting D's and F's on their permanent record, who want to go into the military or college, a date to start class, just like they're giving the preschoolers and the first graders, who will catch up. They've got plenty of years to catch up. We can start. We don't have to wait. We are choosing. And that is what is frustrating to the public, because we know that it's a district choice. White River has been going to school, elementary school, for months. They started high school today, and we're not at 200,000 cases. So that is not accurate. I'm sorry.
So White River is part of a pilot program from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department, and they were providing instant tests along with Eatonville and Peninsula. Orion was not offered that chance to have those instant tests, and that allowed them to have a much quicker start. Yes. So I want to echo a couple things you said. The frustration around the changing numbers and the changing guidance is frustrating to receive as a parent, and also frustrating to receive as an administrator. Going against guidance is legal right now. We could choose to go against guidance. Going against guidance is not always legally advisable and is a much more sticky ground to go against guidance. I feel pretty comfortable when we get at or near guidance. I know at the leadership level, administration level, 2 weeks per grade level has been discussed at the elementary level, and you could already see in the plan that Dr. Apostle shared that even that was not, we started putting grade levels together. Our hope and what Dr. Apostle shared is that he does not have an expectation that we go 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, or that we even necessarily separate middle school and high school. As he mentioned to and alluded to earlier, since one of his top goals is to get seniors back, that's obviously not going to be possible with 2 week spread of each grade. So we're definitely looking at and hoping that we can compress those quite a bit there towards the end.
And Jamie, just a real quick thing. I totally understand what you're saying. And one of the things that I want to show, we have the ability to be able to do our COVID testing. I just received 2 pallets today and expecting 3 additional pallets of COVID tests for our 16 and over students, as well as our staff. That if we do well with our not compliance, but with our participation in our COVID testing, we can continue to move that up quickly, because that's a game changer from my perspective in regards to that. And
yeah, so that's great.
Yeah, and so I feel very, very confident if we have good participation from staff and our older students, we can move much quicker through the process. So we're going to be highly encouraging, highly encouraging participation in the program.
And I wanted to emphasize that the availability of the testing for us, that is a brand new thing that changes things a lot, because we didn't have control over that, just like we don't have control over their decision of who gets the vaccine when. Well, if you are someone who believes in them. And the thing is that even though they say teachers are in I think it was the 1B category, it's stated in the newspaper that it was only if you are 50 and older. Yeah, me too, but there's a lot of people out there. We can't discriminate who is okay to get, your employees should get the vaccination. They should get it if you're going to force them to be there. That's my feeling. Anyways.
Membership has its benefits. There you go.
Woohoo!
I have a question can the plans that we have in place for the elementary school kids, will those apply to the middle school and high school, or do we need more planning and preparation work for those grades to be allowed back? And I think I've been pretty vocal about I want kids back in school. And so I don't want to get to that point where we've hit that threshold. It's time to bring them back. And we're like, oh, no, wait, we got to wait 3 more weeks to prepare. So my question is, have we used this time to prepare for their return so that we're ready to move when we can?
Yeah. We were significant conversations about that. And we're really hopeful. We're really hopeful that we can be successful at our earliest grades and that it will lead to successful introduction of our middle schoolers and high schoolers as well. So we're with you in heart and mind to get our entire pre-K-12 group back to school, and we're just hoping for their safety of students and staff.
Of course. Yeah, always. I'm excited by the prospects of possibly accelerating the timeline with the testing too. So
absolutely
ready. I want to go. Let's do this. And be safe.
And please know that the testing protocol for the 16 and over is that people have to agree to do it weekly. It can't be just hey, I need one because I'm not feeling good. It's a mitigation. It's a safety mitigation part of our safety mitigation, and people have to be willing to participate in the full meal deal. If they're not able to participate in the full meal deal, we can't have them do it. And
so to be clear, I have my board member hat on. We are now distributing the vaccine as a school district.
No, the testing kit. The testing kit.
An
at-home testing kit.
Perfect. I'm glad I clarified that. Thank you.
Yes. No. Yeah, I understand. No. It's an at-home. Matter of fact, I'm not going to spend my time going through what the pilot projects did, but they were able to only test 12 kids per hour per lane. And so this way, the parents and the adults take full control over the testing.
So Cliff, thank you for your contributions and comments as the high school principal. David, do you have anything you'd like to share on a middle school principal perspective?
Well, I kind of want to go back to something that Carrie Director Thibodeau had asked, and I want kids back in school too. And I think everybody on this call does. And frankly, we were pretty much ready to go without some of the finer details back in August. And that's really, like, we were set for a AB hybrid with some online accommodation, and things changed very rapidly for us. And that's done is given us some time to really spend time with some other systems, particularly on the east side of the state, and actually in other states as well, where folks have brought kids back. So we get to benefit from a lot of the lessons learned, which I believe is going to lead us into a position where we're able to make a single go at it and not have to do the yo-yo, which is the thing that we are really, really trying to avoid. Because once we're in, we need to make sure that we're able to stay in. Because if we have to pull back because we can't mitigate transmission and we can't mitigate infection, getting back and restoring that public confidence is going to be really hard. And I think we're in a position where we're pretty well situated. I think having our resource kids and some of our daily kids, and then some of our expansion of other kids on campus, we're pushing, I think Chris mentioned it, about 280 kids a day are on campus right now. And so we have learned a lot about how to manage that. So I feel really confident about a prompt return for middle and high school.
Thank you, David. In our earliest months dealing with the pandemic, I can compare it. It's essentially we've moved from studying arithmetic to being far more sophisticated and having to study calculus and physics. We have really had to step up our game in terms of the work and the details that we need to pay attention to. And there's a great deal of science that we've paid attention to as we develop our plans. And I'm very pleased with the work that we've done. There's far more work to do, and we have to be vigilant. Again, there's danger lurking out there, and we can't let our guard down. And it's essential that we work as a team together, because with a cohesive team, we will be successful. And I'm just very hopeful. You know that I've been reluctant to dive in and set timelines that we've seen other school districts not be able to honor or maintain. It's been a ping pong, a stop, go, stop. We're committed to opening our schools and do so in the right way. And we just need to pull everybody together and make that happen. So, Chris, thank you for your presentation. Do you have anything else you want to add before we move on to Holly?
No, one thing I do that we should be proud of is the fact, and I don't want to jinx it, that we've had three confirmed cases, and that to me tells a lot, and people are being honest, forthright, and I think that really matters. And so I feel, and we've been vigilant about kids with the sniffles and going, well, I don't think he has the sniff. I don't think he has COVID, but he has the sniffles. Well, he goes home anyway. And so that's going to be a challenge for us when they return, because kids with COVID things, symptoms associated with COVID are going to have to go home. But that keeps everyone safe, and it keeps the system moving. So I appreciate this community so much. They've owned the safety measures. They may not have liked them, but they've owned them. And I so much very appreciate the community and what they've done to support our kids at our school district.
We have the greatest number of people participating in this virtual meeting than ever before, 38. It's great. Love it. Holly, why don't you go take it from here?
Okay, I'm going to share my screen with everyone. And we can talk about the second semester open enrollment survey data. So, okay, here we go. So total students enrolled at OSD as of our January count day, which was January 4th, is 2,512 total students. So we initially started sending out communications asking parents to declare their intent for open enrollment for the second semester starting December 29th, and we gave people up until yesterday to respond. We had total responses of 2,234, which accounts for 89% of our student population. When we look at our responses by building, we had, let's see, 25% of the responses were for OHS, 25% for OMS, 27% for PTR, and 23% of the responses for OPS. And when we look at the data for the first semester, student enrollment and responses, total students, again, 2,512 is shown in the left column, indicating the student count, and the first semester data in the right columns. So if you look at the left, you see that right now, in the first semester, in option A, we have 2,191 students. In option B, 321. And this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Obviously, there's a slight margin of error in the data, and 1,801 responses said that they were in option A, and exceedingly, 433 parents responded that their student was in option B, which we know is inaccurate. You know, I think with any data collection, there's always a slight margin of error. We will be verifying it at the building level and confirming student enrollment preference for the second semester. And when we look at the second semester student enrollment and responses, again, on the left-hand column is where we currently are at if we were just to stay in the same course. On the right-hand columns, you'll see the responses. The second semester data shows a decline of 16% of the previous option A students opting to stay in option A, and the return to in-person, and a 21% increase in option B for students who want to either remain or opt into option B and be fully remote. And now we're going to look at the changes by building. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the first semester. On the right, you'll see the second semester for OPS. At OPS, we have an increase of 8% to option A and a decrease of 26% in option B. And if we look at the changes at PTR again, first semester on the left, second semester on the right. At PTR, we have an increase of 2% in option A and a decrease of 10% in option B. And if we keep going and we look at the secondary schools, this is kind of where it gets a little interesting. So on the left-hand column, we have OMS first semester, and on the right-hand column, or graph here, I should say, we have the second semester. So at OMS, we have a 60% increase in option B and an overall decrease of 10% for option A. So we see a larger proportion of students wanting to opt into option B at the middle school. And lastly, when we look at OHS, again, first semester on the left, second semester on the right, at OHS, we have a decrease of 61% of option B students who want to switch to option A. And that results in a total increase of 11% to option A overall. And then when we look at the overall percentages by option, the overall data shows a decrease of students who prefer option A compared to the survey of primary students that was completed in October. In October, 84.9% of 458 responses indicated that they prefer to have their students in option A. Presently, we have 82.6 of 2,234 responses indicating their preference to be in option A, and only 17.4% preferring option B. So it's a sizable difference when it comes to the data collection and an overall decline in the percentage of parents that are willing to send their kids back. So now I'm going to stop sharing my screen and take any questions that anyone has.
What I'd like to add before any questions come through, I just want you to know that we have an accountability, collaboration, and transparency initiative in our district. And anyone who would like a copy of Chris Willis's report, as well as Holly's report, can contact Bonnie Christian, and that those reports will be provided to you.
Karen, you have a question?
Yeah, I just, as a staff member, I didn't see the survey since I don't have a student in the district. But am I understanding parents were at the middle school level, where I see our numbers have changed a lot, that parents basically had to make a decision now to go to option B if they did not want to send their student back in person? So hypothetically, we go back March, April. The parents had to decide now in January that they would have to make the switch from A to B, even though they're very happy with the education their kids might be getting today. But because there's a reason they can't send them to school potentially in April, they're having to switch to option B now at semester. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, so what we did initially when parents were given the option to either opt in A or B, we told them that we would come to them before second semester and allow parents to either continue in option A, which did include a return to in-person instruction when it was safe to do so, or that they would remain in option B and not return back in person. And so that's basically what we did before second semester. We're going back out to parents. We realized that we don't have all of the data and all of the dates to share. Probably more, we didn't have enough information at this point to share with everyone to answer everyone's questions. We're kind of refining the data and making the plans as we go along, but essentially we did go out and say, second semester, you know, did you want option A or would you like to be in option B? And then we did see, like at your building, yours is the only building at OMS where we've seen an increase in option B, and maybe that's just the preference of the students or a combination of a parent and a student preference where we're seeing the data.
I guess for me, as I listen to students this week, because they've been coming in full of questions and comments, what I keep hearing is that the kids are actually okay with what we're doing right now. They like option A as far as the meets with us, but for various reasons, they have parents who are afraid to maybe send them back in person or have a logistical reason to not send them back in person. So it just makes me really sad that I'm going to be losing access to some amazing kids who have just been honestly doing very well in our meets because their parents are looking 3 months down the line to the fact that they wouldn't be able to send them down, back into our building, potentially the end of March, beginning of April. So I guess I'm just throwing that out there.
Absolutely. Thank you. Dave, did you have anything to add to that?
I think so when we looked at the list of kiddos who selected transition from option A to option B, well, actually, it was kids who indicated they wanted to stay in option B. A lot of those kiddos weren't in option B. They were in option A. And so our counseling teams have been doing a lot of work with the results of the survey to reach out to households because there's a number of places where folks misidentified what option they thought they were in option B. They weren't. They were in option A. And so they appear to be a shift. And so I think that we're uncovering a bit of that as we dive into our data set. And I totally transparently, in the same way that we've had folks clamoring at our doors for open the doors, open the doors, open the doors. Now that the doors are about to open, we have a very different group of folks saying there's no way that until we know that a vaccine protocol is in place for everybody, that we want in. And so with the imminent opening of our doors, I think that's changing some households' sensibility about things. I also think that 6 months of folks having family be directly affected by the disease is changing some families' perspectives. And Karin and I have actually had a brief conversation earlier tonight. The profound challenge for us is, and this applies to the high school team as well, is the staffing considerations. And that's why the timing of the survey is what it is and why we're asking folks to make the choice at this point, because shifting in midstream involves mass courses that are already in existence and staffing supports for option B. We have to make those arrangements at the semester. And that's why we're asking households to make that choice.
Thank you, David.
And Jamie, I hear your question, and I see it in the chat. It's rooted in the staffing considerations and the disruption that, and Matt, the former counselor, is shaking his head. When you collapse a class section in the middle of a semester, it's brutal. It has a massive ripple domino effect across the system. And so that's why we're asking households to make that choice at this time.
And I want to just briefly speak to Denise's question about whether or not parents knew what they were choosing. I can't speak for every parent, and I wouldn't want to, but where we saw confusion in the survey, where maybe parents turned in 2 surveys for the same student, or they turned in a survey that said their child was in option B and wanted to make a change, and we know that they're not in option B, we're picking up the phone and calling and trying to explain, are we going to hit every single family that didn't understand? Probably not. But if we're getting calls or seeing comments on some of those surveys that we're questioning, trying to be as proactive as possible and not waiting until we get to the change and going, oh, that's not what I thought it was. So if there's a doubt, we're picking up the phone and calling and trying to get to as many of those right now as we can.
Thank you, Christy.
I have a question about the elementary schedule.
Go ahead.
So the one in the chat about what does it look like when they're not in their in-person time? Absolutely.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are asking that, like, are they going to be online? A lot of people are worried that the teachers are going to be teaching online and in person at the same time. And there haven't been any answers that I have seen clarifying what that looks like.
Yeah, and I know that some of those answers aren't very super clarified yet because there's part of that working also with our union partners before we send it out to families to say this is exactly what this is going to look like. We do know that when kids are with us, we want to be able to use that time really intentionally and really directly. So that asynchronous time that is currently on an elementary schedule broken up with a bunch of meets during the day, that synchronous time when they're with their teacher, and then that asynchronous time where they're doing independent work, and really separating those to say, when you're with your teacher in the like if you're a morning kid, right? If you're with your teacher in the morning, you're doing that really direct, hard learning work in the morning. In the afternoon is going to be some other time. So it might be your specialist time. It might be some other small group time with maybe another person, for example, like if you have speech services and maybe those are in the afternoon. And maybe some additional work from your teacher, like filling out your reading log and doing some assignments that way. But it's not going to be that same level it is right now with saying that your day looks like I'm on the computer the entire time. It will also vary by individual kids and needs to say, for this kiddo, they need this, but maybe not for this kiddo.
Okay. That's what I assumed. And then when you brought up the specialist times, because they're not seeing specialists when they're in school for the morning or afternoon. They're just in their classroom only, as I understand it.
There may be there's some services, for example, if a child receives like physical therapy or occupational therapy,
right.
Those are really nearly impossible for us to right now deliver virtually. So those may be some additional for what we may do in person when they're with us. But for the most part, you're right. Where they're going to be is in their classroom where we can maintain social distancing, where we can say who's in their cohort and things like that, and just to make sure we're keeping everyone safe.
Right. Okay. And then just a second thing about the survey. I knew my kids would automatically stay where they're at if I didn't fill out the survey. And so I didn't, because I had to fill out 5 separate surveys. So if you're creating a survey, you should make it so like you could pick all your kids' names and then the choice, because then I would have done it. And I'm just being honest.
It's duly noted, Jamie.
Okay. And I'll be honest, just for kicks, I did the survey twice for my one son, just to see if I could do it twice. Sorry, just to test it. And it worked. I was able to complete it twice. So
absolutely.
I'm like, well, if they're asking me again, maybe they didn't get it the first time. So I did it again.
We have to allow
probably sent that bad data.
And it is, there's definitely a margin of error, and that's why we need to go in and refine the data, and we need to verify it. But each and every student, as you can see in the data set, people are kind of confused when it comes to which option they may currently be in. Some people's survey was glitchy and it didn't go through, or they thought it wasn't fully submitted, or some people have multiple students, and I've had multiple parents respond on behalf of one student. And so again, we're going to have to go in and fully refine that data, but that's definitely in the works. But in terms of the full picture, the actual raw data itself, that's the information that we've shared today.
I want to assure everyone this survey was not rigged.
And I wanted to add about the survey. Some people were not happy with the timing. What you have to remember is that we're doing this on the fly. We're just trying to keep up with the changes and the numbers and everything else. And so is everything perfect? No, but we're just trying.
Thank you, Kathleen. Okay.
I just wanted to comment back to Karen's point about losing. I think, in the beginning, we heard about so much of the struggle that families were dealing with. And now a lot of families are in the groove of online learning. And I think their students are doing well. And there wasn't an option for them to continue doing that. And I think, Karen, going back to your point, we kind of forced them. It's like you're either going back to in-person learning or you're going completely online on your own. And there wasn't that middle ground choice of just stay the course. And so I think for our family, that stay the course option might have been a good one, but Alex is going back to school. But I think some families would have wanted an option to just keep going because they've got a rhythm to it now.
Thank you, Carrie. Well, I'm really happy that we were able to provide this body some important information. And again, you're free to request a copy of Chris's and Holly's reports, valuable documents. I'd like to set our next meeting for January 26th. That's a Tuesday, January 26th. That will be after the meeting with the board to determine whether or not the board has approved my recommendation along with the leadership team. And I'm hopeful they will, but we will come back together and address the current conditions and the additional work that we've been doing. So more to follow. Thank you, everyone, and good night.